All right, it looks like we are recording and live now. So I do want to welcome everyone to our D&L Interactive Town Hall. I want to thank you for spending some time with us here this early evening here on a beautiful day here in the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. My name is Mike Drabenstott. I'm chair of the board of the D&L National Heritage Corridor, and we've got a great team today, and I do want to thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. Just a couple of ground rules to start. We ask that everyone mute yourself so we can make sure to hear the speakers who are presenting. You can also leave your video off. And then if you have questions for us to answer at the end of the presentation, you can pose those in the chat box, and we'll be able to address as many of those as possible. Following the presentation today, we'll be sending you a link to a recording of the presentation and the presentation itself, along with a survey for you to please fill out, and then links to some additional resources where you can get some more information and learn more. So we're really excited to give you an update on our efforts to close the remaining physical and community gaps along the D&L Trail through the Lehigh Valley and into Wilkes-Barre. And as we're fond of saying, this is more than just a physical trail connection. It's a chance to connect neighborhoods, and it's a chance to connect people to one another, and also to connect them to our river, to health and wellness, to our history, and also to economic opportunity. So when you're joining us today, we want to make sure you understand more than just what we're doing to connect, but why it's meaningful and why we're doing it. And we hope that this is the first of many sessions like this to keep the public updated on our progress. We do want to welcome our special guest today, Cindy Adams Dunn, who is the Secretary for the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and also Elissa Garofalo, who is the Executive Director of the D&L. They'll both be speaking as part of our presentation today. And we also want to give a special shout out and welcome to a number of community partners and organizations who RSVP'd and are hopefully with us on this call. I want to provide, on behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff, our heartfelt thank you for all their involvement and their support for all we're doing to make the D&L Trail a true gem here in Pennsylvania. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for all of your work. And with that, I will pass it over to Cindy Adams Dunn. Secretary Dunn, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. I had to look at the people signed on. I recognize names of a lot of good friends there, so I can picture you sitting in your home offices or out on your decks in the very nice communities along the Lehigh Valley, and the work that you've all done to connect this wonderful asset, the D&L Trail. I can just say this from the state view, the D&L is one of the Commonwealth's most significant assets to meet our goals of recreation for all. If you think about what it means to be a Pennsylvanian, we are actually fortunate. We're one of the few states whose environmental rights and our access to the natural resources is guaranteed in our constitutional. Article 1, Section 27 guarantees the right to clean air, pure water, access to nature and the historical assets of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The statement then makes Commonwealth agencies the trustee of these resources, and it says that it is for all Pennsylvanians, including generations yet to come. So that's a tall order, and that's the mission we operate under. When you think about what that means to Pennsylvania, with 13 million residents and residents yet to come, providing recreation for all and all the assets that mean, not just recreation, but access to water, access to transportation and alternative manners, whether it's on a bike or walking. We take it very seriously, and we see the D&L, because of its linkage through all the communities, as a major important way of meeting that mission and meeting that constitutional mandate. So we take it very seriously, and the good work all of you are doing under the leadership of the D&L is remarkable. And I think the structure you've developed, the D&L as the lead partner organizing motivating, providing technical assistance, convening funders, piecing together the partners for every single piece of this, every gap. I mean, every single foot of this trail has been hard earned and a lot of hard work behind it. And it's a remarkable story. And it's neat that you're so close to closing these gaps. And when Elissa and Michael and the D&L staff come into Harrisburg regularly and give us in DCNR an update and a report, we see the progress. We see the progress every year. Like many things, the toughest parts are the ones to be done last. It doesn't mean there's any lack of hope for doing them. I'm completely optimistic that with everyone's collaboration, with the various funders that we can piece together, with the partnerships and new partnerships, we can close these remaining gaps. Remaining gaps are really important. When you think about what time we're in right now, 2020 is a year we'll all remember. I mean, for those of you with kids, that's, you'll be telling the story to kids and grandkids about 2020, the COVID crisis, but how it's highlighted the importance of what we do, the importance of recreation and access and connection. We're seeing at DCNR anywhere from a 25% to a 200% increase in use in some of the state parks. Trails like the D&L are seeing, people are flocking to the outdoors, flocking to recreation. They see it as an essential need. Our governor recognized it as an essential need. Similarly, with the racial issues of today, the call for equal access and access to all that Pennsylvania has to offer for all of our residents that call has never been louder. And so connection of these assets, the trail, the recreation, the transportation, the access to the water for all residents in the Lehigh Valley has never been stronger. And the trail and finishing these gaps helps meet that call. And so the sections that haven't been done, maybe even through communities who have never accessed the trail, is hard work. It's connecting people to something they never had a hope of having. So it takes a lot of work, takes a deeper engagement. And with the alliance of partners that the D&L has organized and motivates and connects with, this is completely in reach with all of our continued focus and all of our continued partnership. So I'm excited that DCNR, Lauren Possinger is our leader with the D&L Canal, is really critical. We're in it for the long haul. This kind of work takes a long-term commitment. We're in it till the end. We're in it every step of the way. And I'm just excited that you're advancing this through closing the gaps and your focus on the remaining gaps. So with that, I will mute myself out for a bit and be around for the whole seminar here.
Thank you, Cindy. This is Elissa Garofalo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. And I want to thank Cindy and DCNR for being just a tremendous partner. We have many partners, many of whom were on the list earlier, but certainly DCNR is one that is key on any number of levels. Very, very important for our work. The topic today is closing gaps, and certainly we are going to be talking about closing gaps, and some of you may recognize the photo. This was the day that the Mansion House Bridge was installed, and literally this was our biggest project to date, a $4.1 million project. There remains two major physical gaps on the D&L Trail. The one in the Lehigh Valley, which extends from Allentown to Northampton, Cementon, is about 7 miles long, but has the potential of being a 14-mile loop. And then there is an additional 16 miles north of Mountaintop that would take us into the city of Wilkes-Barre. Now, those are the major gaps, but there are a few smaller ones that are out there. Some are links into communities, We expect the bridge at Morrisville in Bucks County to begin construction later this year. There's also a short stretch to the Delaware River in Bristol Borough at the very southern end, as well as communities wanting to have a better physical connection to the trail, such as Easton. But, you know, we have, our trail follows a path that has a nationally significant story. And we often talk about that story, that mine to market, and how we help to fuel America's industrial revolution. But there are parts of the story that have been understated, for sure. And I think, you know, as an organization, we have, over the course of the last year and a half, have been taking steps to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I don't think we have ever done enough to recognize the discriminatory hiring practices, such at Bethlehem Steel, where African Americans were singled out and not welcome to work there. Or in our coal mines, where immigrant labor was taken advantage of to the point that they really had very little chance of gaining a social status or living standard, such as those that owned the mines and such. And, you know, and our very earliest history goes back to William Penn and the 1.2 million acres that was essentially taken from the Lenni Lenape during the walking purchase. But I think those days are over, and we have the conversations have begun and have been quite frank already. So we look forward to closing the gaps as well, you know, some of those physical, historical, as well as the community gaps. So when we talk about physical gaps, it also happens that the remaining trail gaps are mostly in our poorest neighborhoods. The connection from downtown Allentown to the Lehigh River, the connection from Allentown to the river towns such as Copley and Hockendackwa, Catasauqua, Northampton, and downtown Allentown. And we recognize that, and we know that things have to be done in a different manner because of those gaps that exist. But I do want to show you, and this is a great example, and if you could just look at the blue shirt on the left and the blue shirt on the right, those are the same people at the same location. Happens to be Diane Krippis, who was on a tour of our trail gaps. And this is what the area at Dry Run looked like a couple years ago. And to the right, you will see what it looks like today. So when we're talking about closing gaps, it's not just about laying down an 8-foot path of stone. There are places where there are difficult challenges, such as this one, in order to close the gap. When we think about the Lehigh Valley Gap, there is a sequence of 4 projects that need to occur. The map on the right, while we all understand it as the process or the sequence that we hope to see the trail gaps get closed, you can see that it's at this point it's done in segments, and it goes from the east side to the west side of the river, of the Lehigh River. And so we're looking at Northampton Canal Street Park to connect to Hanover Canal Park, and West Catasauqua to the Allentown Lehigh Landing, and the Hanover Canal Park in purple to Allentown Canal Park, as well as Cementon to West Catasauqua. And that's our current sequence that we have. But this is a good reminder that this is where a connection to nature can happen that does not exist currently. The Lehigh River, unbeknownst to some, was actually privately owned for many, many years. And as a result, there was not access to the river. But today, more than almost 60% of the D&L Trail is located within 100 feet of a waterway. And usually that waterway is the Delaware River or the Lehigh River. We have unprecedented connection to our watershed so that people understand the value that that water brings to our community. Another example of a gap that exists, and if you look at the photos from bottom to top, you're looking at what this location in Whitehall Township at the Ray Street Bridge looked like historically as an active railroad. In the middle, you can see what it looks like today. And at the top, you can see what's proposed. That was the concept that has been developed working with the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and Penn Praxis out of the University of Pennsylvania. If you can see at the top, we're actually looking at a side-by-side commuter and pedestrian corridor to connect Allentown to the Riverside communities. At this time, I'm going to ask Brian, I think, if you can unmute Becky Bradley, and I'm going to let her talk a bit about the Riverside Drive project. I'm hoping that that's how we can do this.
Hello.
Hey, thank you, Becky. Thank you for joining us. I know you have a busy schedule tonight.
Yes, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this. As Elissa had mentioned, the gap in the Allentown Whitehall area is the largest gap in the D&L system. It's also in the most economically stressed and one of the most racially diverse areas of the Lehigh Valley. In fact, we've designated it as an environmental justice community. So closing that gap could go a long way to making a more equitable community for everyone. So we're really excited about this project in the fact that we get to work with the D&L and the City of Allentown and Whitehall and both counties and waterfront partners to put this project together. And I probably missed like 10 people, and I apologize for that because we have a really significant list of partners. Essentially, it's a public-private partnership that we applied to the U.S. Department of Transportation for a build grant. And that build grant request was for $24 million with a $20 million match, private sector match, 100%, that would close the gap that Elissa just described and provide all of these other benefits. It also helps support the redevelopment of a formerly contaminated brownfield site into new mixed-use housing development as well. And there's a whole bunch of riverbank restoration that would go on as part of that as well. We really do want to get 1,000 letters of support into the U.S. Department of Transportation for this project. We have a project website called buildriversidedrive.com. And if you could literally take 30 seconds to type that in, right in the left-hand corner is a button that says send email to Secretary Chow. And if you just click on that button, there's a pre-filled in letter. You can actually edit it if you want to add more, take some stuff out. But we're hoping to really show the benefits of this project at the federal level as well. So again, thank you for having me here this evening. And please go on to buildriversidedrive.com to help all of us close the gap for not only our region, but for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. And, and it's important to remember that none of this work happens in a vacuum. It's all done in partnership with great partners such as the Planning Commission, the counties, the cities, because they are the owners of the land. They are the ones that are planning for the future. I'm very proud to say that, you know, the D&L Trail holds a very special, a very important place in most of the regional and local comprehensive plans and transportation plans, walk, roll, and the like. You know, we are at a really important time and to move this forward. And I would encourage everyone to please go on and get your letter in to support the Build Riverside Drive project. So at this point, I'm just going to head north and talk a little bit about the gap that exists in Luzerne County. And for those of you who may or may not know or are familiar with it, you know, the anthracite region of the D&L Trail extends from the Carbon County and on up through Luzerne County. Carbon County is actually fully connected at this point once we opened the Mansion House Bridge, but in the very northern stretches, another very challenged area socioeconomically, some of the most difficult health data. There are, it has a very low standing for Geisinger in their community health assessment, quite rural. In the north, we partner up with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, who's on today, with North Branch Land Trust, with the county, with the city, and various municipalities. One of the most important projects up in that area is the area through Glen Summit. And we were fortunate to be able, this is just north of Lehigh Gorge and before Mountaintop. For many years, it's a private development, and for many years, they were not willing to allow the trail to go through here. Indeed, now we do have a memorandum of understanding that will allow for us to get to that additional 16 miles. And here is a concept plan for what it might look like. On the right is what it looks like today. On the left is what we hope and what the community residents have worked with us on a schematic in order for what it would look like. So this would be the future section north of the Black Diamond Trailhead, which is actually owned and operated, maintained by the Bureau of Forestry, another part of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So from here, I'd like to talk about some of the other gaps. Certainly there are the physical gaps, but what you are seeing here in this particular, we're talking about the social and cultural gaps. What you're seeing here, the places, the map, the redder the color is the more diverse the neighborhood. And there are spots all along. There are these markers all the way along, but it's telling that the places where the most diverse population lives is also the place where the gaps exist. That big red gap is the Lehigh Valley Gap. Up north, that's the area north of Mountaintop. Down below, that's Morrisville. And out of our 10 poorest trailhead communities, none of them have a fully connected section of trail through them. Out of our 10 most diverse trailhead communities, only 2 have a fully connected trail through them. And so, you know, these are the places where, you know, we've always said, well, it's capacity, but there's also there's an injustice that's happening here that we want to very much be able to address. So we're identifying where we need to do better. We need to tell different stories and how, you know, people of color related to the D&L's industrial story. We want an inclusive trail with diverse trail users across ethnicities, ages, and abilities. We have always strived to have ADA compatible trailheads, but we need to do even more. So there is a legacy of inequity. You know, consistently our neighborhoods with the higher rates of poverty and more racial diversity lack access to the trail. This figure that we're showing here is from a 2018 Lafayette College study of trail users in the Lehigh Valley. And it showed that only 3% of trail users at that time were Black, 10% Hispanic. And for context, the Lehigh Valley's Black population is 6.25 and the Hispanic population is 11.9. So we are underperforming in this metric. The D&L also means business. There's an economic reason why we are doing what we're doing. Pennsylvania's outdoor recreation economy generates $29 billion in consumer spending and $1.9 billion in taxes. Our own Trip Umbach study looking directly at the corridor and its resources, the trail and its attractions, show that there was a $474 million economic impact by the work that the D&L does, whether it's promoting the heritage attractions, encouraging and working with trail-friendly businesses and main streets, and as well as attractions and grant giving. You know, recreational activity, you can see the graphic above, you know, it is an open space in the Lehigh Valley is a money generator. In the outdoor recreation economic impact, I mentioned those. Also in the Lehigh Valley Return on Environment study, cited $58.9 million collected in taxes and over 9,600 jobs. And the interesting thing about the jobs that are created, these are not jobs that you need a PhD for, or you need, you know, these range from you know, retail, service jobs, all the way up to making the area more attractive for our industries for relocation to the area. Then our next point is about the importance of and how of the trail system, the D&L Trail, as well as other trails, to the health of our communities, the walkability, bikeability, and transit-oriented communities that we have. This leads to healthier populations. And we have, from our Get Your Tail on the Trail program that we've been doing for 7 years with St. Luke's University Health Network, shows that on average, folks who are using the D&L Trail are burning more calories than at home or in gyms or even on other trails, because we have the longer distances. You can go out and you can stay out further. This is a critical part of our health infrastructure. Each year, just through our Get Your Tail on the Trail, over 200 million calories are burned on our trail. And this is, I mentioned it earlier about Luzerne County, you know, where there is no, essentially very little trail. In 2004, they ranked number 28 out of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania for their health status. They now rank 37th. They've lost, they're losing health status as opposed to gaining it, unlike other places around the Commonwealth. So what's next, you ask? So we are planning for those physical gaps. This is not easy stuff. As I mentioned, you know, in many places, the trail is a 10-foot path that goes through and connects communities, and it's wonderful. But in the Lehigh Valley, as well as up in Luzerne County, we have other kinds of obstacles that we have to deal with. We have highways. We have places where roads have intercepted the traditional route that the canal towpath or the rail trail went. We have acquisition issues with Norfolk Southern in the area of Cementon. And we also, and especially now with the pandemic, we also have to pursue alternate funding sources. We have done a lot, and I have to, hats off to Secretary Dunn and to our state resources, but we have to go beyond those state resources and look at alternative funding sources such as the Economic Development Administration and perhaps some other health-oriented funding sources. We also have to host more community conversations and listening sessions in these areas where the gaps exist. We need to do a better job. And I have to say that this is where we were. We knew that this is what we had to do, and we actually were preparing to do this prior to the 3 months that we've been working from home. But now more than ever, it needs to be this work needs to be jump-started. And internally, we have to foster a more inclusive organizational climate. We consider ourselves a family, our staff and our board members, so much talent and so much passion for our work. But there are things that we don't see. And it's time, we may be able to relate to these things that are happening in our cities and to our minorities. But they don't necessarily happen to us, and we need to understand that and improve the policies and the training as needed. And I'm happy to say this already began. Starting last year, I began to sit on the United Way's DEI task force for external organizations, and that has led to just a tremendous amount of work within those communities, as well as healthy aging initiatives. And we need to build advocates. The folks on this call and your friends, we need to build those advocacies to be able to send out the message beyond just our membership, to go beyond. So we are planning on applying for additional funding from other sources. We are creating a very robust case for support and working with corporate partners and getting our projects shovel ready so that they can, when the funds are available, we can get going. And also, the internal learning that is happening to be a more inclusive organization and do more inclusive outreach in our communities with better policies and training and better listening. Certainly we do things well, but we all need, we're all students and need to be open to that. So on this slide, I do want to point out there are some resources, and as we mentioned earlier, that this recording will be shared as well as this presentation. On our own website, you can access trail maps, you can access information about our National Canal Museum and our educational programs, as well as events. There are many ways to support the D&L. You can donate. We have a campaign for resilience going on right now because so many of our events and fundraising efforts we had to cancel, and so we're redirecting that energy. You can become a member, or you can volunteer your time or talent. And that comes in a variety of ways. We have a very generous gentleman who is a lawyer who donates his time and talent to us. So it's not you don't necessarily have to go out and get dirty if that's not if you don't want to be a trail tender. Then there's also, as Becky mentioned, you can help us to get those 1,000 support letters at buildriversidedrive.com. It will take you less than 2 minutes to do that. And then as a part of a national group that I belong to, there is a great article about how, while we may be tempted to sit back and say, well, I guess we have to put these things off, you got to think again, because right now the outdoors, greenways, trails are more important than ever. People and we are learning that we can connect. We don't necessarily have to be in a room physically together. There are many ways in which we can connect and how we can pursue these very, very important projects. And finally, there is a link here to that D&L, the trail use survey that was done by Lafayette, if you'd like to look at that in more detail. And we will be providing a link to the Penn Praxis concept plan, Catalyst for the Future, the framework that was developed by Penn Praxis in partnership with our communities, the Planning Commission, and our counties. So, and these will be shared later. So at this time, we will open the floor. Kelly Federico, who is our Gifts and Development Manager, will take questions. You can use the chat box. We're on Facebook Live, and there may be some questions coming in that way. And as you can see, although I usually start out with this map on the left, we're 165 miles. We literally connect Wilkes-Barre practically to Philadelphia. And we follow the path that anthracite took from the mines of northeastern Pennsylvania to help build the industries of the Lehigh Valley and then to help build Philadelphia. And you can see that route. And our offices, of course, are located smack in the middle. So at this point, I would be happy to take questions. And if I can't answer them, I'm going to pass them on to or at this point, I could also ask Secretary Dunn if she'd like to say anything in addition before we take questions. We have time.
I'll just jump in here. Yeah, I want to really applaud you for a frank discussion about race and for taking proactive steps. And as you mentioned, ahead of time, but I think in DCNR, we're the same way. We started our DEI program a couple of years ago, but I think we've all resolved to do better. It doesn't mean we'll be perfect, but I think having those frank conversations and then realizing it's going to take a little more work to connect to communities who have never had the benefit of these assets and have never had it to even ask for. So connecting with them on the things they care about and the community organizations that are there will be critical. And I know you know that. I know your partners are all very adept at that, but it'll take some more work. But once people understand what's there and what that they really need to have access to or deserve to have access to, I think it'll be highly successful in engaging all these communities in both the work and also as complete integrated members of all of our staff teams. And I want to thank Elissa for your help with DCNR and our stakeholders on that whole issue that we're looking at comprehensively across conservation and recreation in Pennsylvania. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy.
Hello, everyone. Like Lisa said, I'm Kelly Federico. I'm the manager of Gifts and Development at the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. Thank you for submitting questions. I will get started with what we've got. So what specific steps is the D&L Trail taking to outreach to communities of color to bring awareness and encourage use of the trail?
Well, I think I tried to point out a few things in our earlier, and it's sort of unfortunate in that we were at a point when we were about to do more outreach in the Lehigh Valley community in particular when the pandemic struck. We actually have and whether we get this funding or not, we are committed to doing things better. We are committed to having the conversations in the community, listening, and because, there's one thing that I know one thing I've learned in my career is that if you come in and you build something and you think it's what people want, many times it's not, and there's no ownership and it's not taken care of. What remains to be built should be prized by its community and therefore should involve its community. I think Brian is on, or Lauren, would either of you like to add to that?
Hi, this is Brian Greene, the Director of Trails and Conservation. Yes, to echo Elissa's statements, we need to do more to make the trail a more inclusive place. And that includes not just building the trail, but also programming and making sure that all communities, that all walks of life feel welcome on the trail. Because our internal data has shown that the more that people feel a sense of place, the more people feel connected to the trail and welcome there, the more likely they are to come back, and the more likely they are to use it again, and the more likely they are to advocate for it. And we need to have a coalition of people from all walks, shapes, and sizes to help us finish these gaps. So we will be actively working to reach out to these communities to make sure that everyone feels included on the D&L Trail.
And Cindy, I wonder if you want to comment on the state recreation plan related to this topic.
Right. So ironically, the name of the state recreation plan is Recreation for All, and it has a major emphasis on equity. And we should be rolling that out sometime in July. And it was written and conceived of by a large group of stakeholders that were diverse, and also a lot of public input. And it does point out something that I meant to say earlier. When you think about these big networks, especially big urban networks, and focusing in on the D&L and right in the Lehigh Valley and the Link network, and the importance of it to the transportation system, getting people to work. And once people have that option of connecting, you're connecting from a neighborhood to a job, from a job to a neighborhood, from a school to a community, getting on a transit system, buses and such, and on-road cycling networks, that alternative transportation is going to become a real driver. And I know your plans include that consideration. It's really remarkable when you see that happen. Last time I was at the Jordan Creek Greenway and doing a ribbon cutting, our ribbon across the trail was actually blocking a commuter biker trying to get to his job at the local Wawa. So you'll see more and more of that. But on the recreation side, again, the recreation side recognizes everything you've said about the value of recreation, economic driver, the fitness, the connectivity, the more subtle, hard to measure community connection, giving people a place to gather and talk and run into each other and talk to each other, making it welcome for everybody. It's a real asset to lift the whole community, that network of communities that it connects. So I can't say enough about the good work you're doing on that and the impact it'll have. Recreation, economy, quality of life, and people's jobs and getting to the jobs.
So I see a couple of questions that came in, and both have to do with transportation. And it's important to recognize that the recently adopted Lehigh Valley Walk Roll identified the Lehigh Valley Gap as a catalyst project for an active transportation network. And what that means is, connecting multimodal transportation, buses, walking, trails, sidewalks. So it is, it's very well thought out. The Allentown's Vision 2030 has prioritized, key trail systems as a key piece of their transportation infrastructure. We often, we think of the trail in so many different ways, but, when you look at that route from Allentown to Easton, it can replace in some way, 22. We are not far off the ability of connecting other nearby trails that are identified in the Link trail network in the Lehigh Valley to provide those kind of connections from the attractions from the neighborhoods that are off the spine. And that is, that's a unique thing that we do have.
Elissa, essentially the D&L is going to be the equivalent to 22 or 78 through the Lehigh Valley. It's going to be, the main artery that connects all the other trails and connects the municipalities and the cities. And as Cindy said also, you look at the whole stretch of the D&L, for some chunks of it, it's primarily recreational. When you look at it here in the Lehigh Valley, it's part of the transportation infrastructure. It's part of the healthcare infrastructure in terms of giving people a place that they can go out and exercise. It's also part of the social infrastructure in terms of how we get people out and get them interacting. So here in the Lehigh Valley, it fulfills probably 4 or 5 different roles in addition to the wonderful recreation and access to the environment. And that's, to me, one of the reasons that it's most urgent that we focus on this.
Thanks, Mike.
Our
Kelly?
next question, how much has trail volume increased on the D&L Trail since the pandemic versus last year?
Brian, you're probably the best one to talk about. You're the numbers
Mr.
guy.
Data.
Mr. Data.
Yeah, I can give that to you, and this will be a quick preview next week or two when our Dirt on the Trails. This is what my blog post is about. But we are seeing 2 phenomenons going on. We are seeing both a seasonal increase. So like when you compare May 2020 to May 2019. So we are seeing that that period in time is much higher from there. We are also seeing what an overall volume increase. So if you look at the highest month out of the year in 2019, our May 2020 was higher than, the highest month, which is typically like a July or like an August. So we are seeing a large increase in the seasonal increase, but then, which is likely due to people responding to the COVID nature. But then the overall increase makes us really think that we are seeing new trail users being created. We are seeing people rediscovering biking, rediscovering walking, and people want to access trails and parks in their local communities. And so that's why the D&L Trail is essential for them to be able to have it during these times.
Brian, as a follow-up from Will in the chat, how is traffic on the trail tracked?
Yeah, we have these machines that are called trail counters. They're commonly used throughout the country, throughout the world now, and they shoot a infrared beam across the trail. And so anytime somebody walks past it, it just does, it just keeps counting and it reports the numbers back to us. And so we have these all up and along. Most people pass by them. They don't even notice them, which is a good thing. We want them to be left alone and not have people mess with them. But it's a way for us to help manage the trail, help us provide data to really see when people are using it, how they're using it. And then it helps us for maintenance. It helps us for the economic development numbers that we are able to create. And yeah, it's a very useful tool for us. And it allows us to show that the D&L Trail is a place that hundreds of thousands of people visit a year. And this year will be our highest year we've ever had measured.
I do see in the chat, mentioning the PEC study on increased usage in trails. I saw that study, I think it was last week, and Elissa and Kelly, if there's a way that we can add that to the resource and get that out. It's a really good study that talks about trail use, not just here in Eastern PA, but around the entire Commonwealth. And it does show just a dramatic increase about how people are flocking to trails as a way to get outside, get exercise, and find some respite, in the troubling times here. So I'd highly recommend looking at that as well, as we're going to provide that as a resource.
We can add that to the list.
Yeah, it's
Janet,
a really good study, really well done.
Janet, did you want to share anything about that? I saw your note.
No, just that it's available, and it does, the D&L provided your trail count data for that and did surveys. So I know we surveyed with, anecdotal information from individuals and trail managers across the Commonwealth. Like Michael said, we use trail count data. But it's just like you're saying, that this has become a respite for people. It's one of the things that people can do to get out and take a break and feel healthy. And I'm just hoping that it will continue. after this, so that, and I'm hoping that a lot of the trail organizations are using this as an opportunity to kind of like promote the trails. You know, if you're out and you're enjoying this trail, certainly, you know, please contact us and get some more support and advocacy for the trails. That's my wish.
Thank you.
One of our submitted questions, why do you think there is limited trail use by communities of color?
Well, I think that there's a situation in some of it's in design. There has been as a planner by education, some of the programs that we perhaps thought were so great, in some ways actually created segregated situations in our parks and in our communities. And perhaps we've not really looked at that. There are also things such as, you know, the use of how different cultures use the outdoors. You know, we may want to go out and ride like heck, you know, and get fit and everything, but there's also, you know, there are communities, particularly our Hispanic communities, who like to gather, you know, and picnic, and perhaps, you know, that has not always been seen as attractive, which is not right. So I think that's some of it. I know that Mike, you live in Allentown, and I think you have some thoughts on that.
As I mentioned before too, I think trails, especially through the Lehigh Valley, have a big opportunity to be part of the social infrastructure that we have, where you have the opportunity to have chance encounters with other people, and, you know, build an opportunity for diverse populations to come together. And to me, that's one of the best things about trails. I mean, it's a public asset, and we're there for the public. So we want to see all the public there. And I think by making sure we're very intentional about how we provide access, very intentional about listening to what the needs are in the community, that we can find a way to really make this a social infrastructure for everyone who's adjacent to and who comes to visit. And I think it's even more important here in the Lehigh Valley and up in Wilkes-Barre than some of the areas that might be more pass through. Right? I see, you know, the Lehigh Valley and up in Wilkes-Barre being a place where people can congregate, where people can meet one another, and where people are, you know, commuting to and from work, in addition to all the recreational benefits. So it's something that we're attuned to, and something that we're going to be listening for as we talk to the community.
We have a question from Lawrence from Facebook. Any consideration about connecting the Norbath to the D&L using the old trestle in Copley?
Is that Lauren? Did you want to address that?
So the Norbath is currently connected to the D&L in Northampton, and will be connected to that former canal side, the eastern or river left side of the Lehigh Valley Gap. Any connection across that trestle would be years down the road, potentially, with that Norfolk Southern acquisition that Elissa mentioned. So it's a potential connection that's on our radar, but the project specifics aren't far enough along for me to say one way or the other if that connection will happen or
not. Next question, is there any data on how likely new trail goers are to return to the D&L for multiple trips?
That's a good question, but I do, I don't know if that I have it. I'll give that to Brian after I'm done. But one of the things that this recent situation that we're in, I think there's an opportunity for what they're calling micro-tourism. And so, whereas, you know, I may live in the Easton area, and that's the stretch of trail that I regularly use. but I think there's going to be more of attraction to go and venture out and visit other sections. And I know that we're seeing that. Couple things that are on the that are about to roll out. We do have, we just updated our website, and I would encourage folks to check that out, delawareandlehigh.org. In the next month or so, there will be a new trail guide, comprehensive trail guide that goes out that does introduce the various sections of trail, and hopefully will make it even that much more attractive. Perhaps if you're from the anthracite section, you want to go and explore the Delaware Canal section. And also the upgraded maps and brochures. The map that you see here on the screen is a new map, and there are 3 new regional maps that are coming out as well. Any other comments on that from my colleagues?
I'd say maybe no. I'll let Brian add to mine, but he might have data. All I know is from anecdotally, I'm talking to people who are exploring new parts of the trail. Maybe they had one section there. They're used to biking between Allentown and Bethlehem, and they're going up to Cementon to go up to Sladington or beyond, or they're going from Easton and south, or they're trying new areas because they're realizing how much they enjoy it. And these are people, whether they're biking or walking or running. And not only that, but they're going from the D&L and going on the Norbath Trail, or they're going up to the Lehigh Valley Nature Center and going on the Appalachian Trail for a hike. And just talked to someone today who's using the Lehigh Valley Trail map and crossing off every trail they go on, almost like a little passport. So that's no data, but a lot of anecdotal evidence that I'm hearing.
Brian?
Yeah, to answer, Will, your question, we haven't gone out and done surveys right now because of the social distancing, but from the past times when we do this, approximately 35% of our trail users report that they use the D&L Trail weekly in the average month. So we would expect that, my prediction would be that these people would follow a similar pattern, and that is that a good chunk of them, probably around a third of them, when they come out, they will continue to come back to the D&L Trail. And our data also shows that when people come out, they over 70% of them spend at least an hour on the trail and a visit. And this is where we're able to provide those really high quality health benefits of people getting out, getting active, trying to reach that 150 minutes per week that we should be active, help fight obesity, to help fight diabetes. So hopefully these will be lifelong trail users that we are making right now.
And Brian, there's a question on the chat about the paddle event that was to happen. I know it was based in Easton. Have you heard anything more about that?
It is currently postponed. The organizers are waiting to see if they can do it this fall, or they will circle back next year. So to be determined.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience, or anyone who might want to make a comment? We're happy to unmute. Okay, if not, we are at 6:30, and so what I will do, if it will let me, it's not letting me advance for some reason. Excuse me. There we go. Mike, would you like to take us out?
Just want to thank everyone again for taking part in our town hall today, listening to what Secretary Dunn had to say to inspire us and tell about our place here in Pennsylvania, what we're doing. And thanks to Elissa and the staff as well for all their work in pulling this together. So there's some things you can do coming out of here, and we can send you a reminder tomorrow by email. As Becky said, send a support letter for the build grant. I will correct Becky, this takes 20 seconds, not 30. It is that easy to do. And don't just send it, share it on Facebook, share it with people. It is so simple to do. And we should be able to get a couple thousand, not just 1,000 letters, on top of all the other support that we've gotten from municipalities and other leaders in the area. We are going to be sending a post-event survey. If you take just a couple minutes to give us your feedback on that, we'd really highly appreciate it, so we know how we can improve these and how we can continue to offer information that you find valuable. You feel free to donate your time or talent as a volunteer, or we also do have our campaign for resilience, our mid-year appeal to help offset some of the shortcomings we're having with some of our fundraising events. We're looking to raise $20,000 by the end of June. I think we're halfway there, so we still have 2 weeks to go to hit $20,000. We appreciate all the support we've gotten already, but we're really aiming for that 20,000. And then finally, be heard. Let your community leaders in your municipality, at the county level and state and federal levels, know about the importance of trails and the D&L, especially here in the Lehigh Valley and up in the Wilkes-Barre area. We ask you to introduce new friends and neighbors and family members to the trail. So take someone who hasn't gone on a bike ride in a while, take them out. Go for a walk with someone who maybe hasn't been outside or has seen the river in a while. And get them to experience what you experience when you go out. And then we ask that you share your trail experience on social media with the hashtag D&L Trail. So you can spread the word and we can create a community of people online who really value everything that the D&L delivers in the community. We do have Elissa's information on here for anyone who has questions. And again, we will be sending you an email with a list of those resources and links that you can take and delve a little more deeply into. Again, thanks for your support. Thanks for your time tonight. It seems like a beautiful day outside, so go out and enjoy the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.